Okay, put a round of applause together for Lightning Creek Drum. They come from Namipu country. That's who we just heard over the surround system. So I'll start out. Imakis Katsiauyao, Shelly G, Diane, Paige, for allowing me to be here today. Inam waniktuas kusnim kesknuat, soyapa waniktuas Stacia Morfin, tats ekpa'ain. What I said in the Namipu Tim, that is the Nez Perce language, is good morning. My name is one who takes care of water, also known as Stacia Morfin. Tats ekpa'ain is a big welcome. Welcome to the Shoshone Bannock country in which we are being able to enjoy today. That's whose homelands we are on right now. Shoshone Bannock is one of the 5 tribes here in Idaho. And I'm a part of, again, the Namipu, or what people know us as the Nez Perce Nation. We call ourselves Namipu because that is the original name in which we called ourselves, which translates into the people or the real people. Now, Nez Perce was a name that was given to us by French fur traders in the 1800s, and that translation is pierced nose in the French language. So when we look at the dialect in which we communicated with one another, it was very much a sign language dialect. So we're the people that came over the mountains and through the rivers. So our old people tell us that the action of through the rivers was the misconception of the pierced nose, because that is not something that we had historically done. Of course, we have a lot of young and old people who pierce their noses now, so it could be relevant, but I just always like to set that straight because we like to kind of decolonize not only the names, but some of the stories. And I want to get into my personal narrative on how to fulfill your purpose, how to fulfill your destiny in life. Because for several years, I was unaware of who I was and the strengths and the abilities that I have, that each and every one of us individuals has within ourselves. I am now the owner and operator of Nez Perce Tourism, LLC, Traditions Gift Shop. We're also an AA certified business, which means that we do business with the United States government. We have several contracts with the Forest Service, the United States National Park Service, and we're working on contracts right now with the Army Corps of Engineers. And so we're really doing this amazing, important work that needs to be done at the policy level, at the federal level, of course at the community level for our families and for each individual. But this work we're doing is really deeply integrated into cultural values and identity. And identity for me was not something that I had always had. And so I'll get into the 3 pillars of tourism and how it kind of ties in with helping me align with finding my destiny, which was not very long ago. But let me tell you, once you do find your purpose in life, there's no looking back. And it's the greatest feeling. And sometimes, you may think, I'm doing well, I'm very successful in my personal, my education, my career, but you might feel like there's just something missing. Like there's just this empty feeling that it just hasn't been fulfilled yet. And so I'll talk a little bit about my narrative, and then I can give you some steps in which might help you be able to find that little pit, that little seed, that little sparkle that's in all of us that we can help bring out so we can share our light with others. But yeah, so not very long ago, I had no clue who I was. As a Native American Aya, a Nez Perce woman, I had no clue of my identity. I was really confused. I'm half white and half Nez Perce, Namipu. And so when I would go to the reservation, I was kind of the white girl. And when I would go into Lewiston, into town, I was the Native girl. And I just really felt like, can't I just be both? Can't I just be who I am? So I always felt like there was something being taken or kind of shots thrown at me. So I had a really hard time identifying with who I was. And then one day, while I was in federal prison, and this is the kicker, so I actually went to federal prison because I found myself in a really dark place with drugs and alcoholism. And I finally was able to get so deep into this game that I found myself serving 3 years in the feds. And so one of these days while I was in prison, and at this time I believe I was in Arizona, federal prison camp, I finally looked into the mirror, and every day I would do it, and I would say, Stacia, I love you. And I couldn't feel it because it wasn't true. I would go back, after doing sessions of healing and forgiving and talking about things in my life that I endured as a child, things that I experienced in my community. Violence in Native American communities is really something that happens quite often within family households. And you might think about, the conspiracy of silence and how that works. It's like you see it happening, but you don't ever talk about it because you'll probably get in trouble, right? That continual generational trauma that's been passed down since the 1800s, when we were in the period of Indian Wars, when our people were continually fought down and our homelands were taken. And you would think about, the soldiers given directives to shoot low into the teepees and to start the teepees on fires early in the morning. And, really these things weren't combatants versus warriors. They were really families fleeing for their lives. So for continual generations, it's been, death. It's been eventually loss of land, loss of language, loss of culture, as Shelley said, and then eventually boarding schools where we were forced to cut our hair, forced to be given new names, European names, forced to believe another religion that isn't of our own because we're very much connected to our land. So you think about all the conditional and the traumas that policy and systemic forces have been able to allow. And then sometimes we look at why Native Americans have so much problems with poverty, with lack of finances, drugs, alcoholism, loss of identities, because for so long we couldn't be who we were. We couldn't be Native American. I couldn't wear my hair in braids. I couldn't wear my eagle feathers like you see on the picture here. I have a eagle fan in my hand and a 100-year-old Lee scow, a basket hat with a 220-year-old dress on. Those are things that are very important for us that my family had to hide, or else it would be taken from them as far as material culture being taken from our people. But these things were very, very confusing. And so you look at today's society, I'm thinking, gosh, again, I don't even know who I am. So every day, for 55 days, I looked in the mirror and said, Stacia, I love you. As I was going through my cognitive behavioral therapy classes and dealing with these things that I had worked through as a child and the choices I made as a young adult and so forth, some of them self-inflicted, definitely. But I was able to start healing. And that's what's really important for us as people, because sometimes we just mask, and sometimes we're so good at masking some of those traumas that we don't even honestly remember them until we get into a group setting. And people can say, this is something that I experienced, and, I just kind of want to talk about it to let it out. And it's the hardest thing, the 3 hardest words in this world to ever say is, I need help. But they're so powerful, those words, and there is help out there. So I highly recommend, for whatever it is, whether it's mental health, if you're looking for a spiritual journey, for anything that you might need help with, but you're scared to ask, I highly recommend just finding somebody that you trust and just let them know that, hey, I really need help with this. Can you lend me an ear? And I promise you that things will start falling into place as far as healing, because healing is very important to find your destiny. And so as we were working through all of these traumas and really looking through kind of that whole healing process and journey, I was able to, while I was in prison, to attend the sweat house once a week. And so that was very important for me because I grew up in the sweat house with my family. And I started remembering these old songs that would come to me, these old traditional songs. So then from there, we started a drum group in prison. And then from the drum group, we started a dance troupe. And then we started hosting these mini events for not only like the visitors on Sundays, but then the staff. They wanted to learn more about our Native and Indigenous cultures and language and stories and dancing. And there's different styles of dances. And so when I really look at where tourism actually began, it began in prison, where you would think it would have been the darkest moments in my life. And I have to be very, very careful, because when I was in prison and I fell to my knees and asked God for help, that I need help, remember? I fell to my knees, and what was so beautiful about this is I put my hands in the air and said, God, I can't do this by myself anymore. And I said, I need you, I need help. It wasn't, 3 minutes later, 5 minutes later, 3 months later, after you do X, Y, and Z, I'm here for you. It was an immediate reaction that I felt that entered my heart and my body. And he said, I've been here the whole time. And I just thought that was so beautiful, because it was an instant reminder of who I was in God. and that I do have a purpose in my life. But it just took me that time to take a time out and have those moments of self-reflection, of healing, of forgiveness was very, very, very important for me in my life as I move forward with my destiny. I can guarantee you that day that I went back and looked in that mirror and said, Stacia, I love you, I actually meant it. And that was the most beautiful, beautiful healing of transformation that I've ever experienced. And I've never looked back since. Yeah, we have rough days. Yeah, we have challenging things that we come across in our personal, professional, education, careers, whatever it might be. But you can still look in that mirror and authentically say, Stacia, I love you. Or your name, I love you. And if you go in the mirror and you look and you just don't feel it, keep working inside on those things that you're blocking from healing and from allowing you to fulfill your destiny. But one of the great things about tourism is that when we talk about the history, of course, if you know anything about history of the United States, it was very, very brutal for Native American people. But to be able to share that in a way of healing, in a way of reconciliation, but still be very, very honest is the most important thing that we can do from our perspectives. And I absolutely love being able to share that with you all. And so another great point that I wanted to talk about is the performing arts and how that allows us to strengthen our cultural identity. So when we started doing our performances in prison, we actually, which is really strange, were able to get approval from our guards to use some of our sheets and our pillowcases to cut, sew, draw, and make some of our regalias on. So the Fast and Fancy dance, what that is, it emulates a butterfly or an eagle. So we were able to make our Fast and Fancy outfits, our jingle dresses, which is actually a healing dance, and then our traditional outfits as well. But it was really important for us to be able to remind not only our people within our circle, but also the people around us of their strength and in their cultural identity. Because remember, a lot of the times, the loss of language, culture, land is that direct disconnect from who we really are. Because we believe that our hair, our body, our hands are an extension of the earth. And when that earth is disturbed or it is not being sustained correctly or stewarded correctly, that also affects us as Native Americans because we have that holistic view. Another thing is that I really love about our people is that when we look at spirituality, we believe that there's this beautiful big rope that comes down from heaven. And as that rope gets closer to earth, it goes out into different strands. And as those strands hit each and every one of us, that is us believing and hanging on to whatever it is that we believe in. It can be Catholic, Christian, Longhouse, Sweathouse, Methodist, whatever it is that you believe in. We say that you hang on to that strand as tight as you can, or maybe it's a couple different strands. But you hang on to whatever it is that you believe in, and as you ascend back into heaven, that rope goes all the way back to the same God, and that's the one God that we can all believe in. So I love our analogy that we don't want to force anybody into believing something, but we know that as our spirits unite and as we connect, in our language, we don't have a word for goodbye. We say Kots Pamawa, and that means until we meet again. Because this moment that we have right here, our spirits have connected. And what that means is, although I might pass you here on this earth, and maybe I don't recognize you and I don't say hi and I apologize, but as soon as we get up into heaven, into the next world, we will know each other again. And our spirits will say, hey, you remember down in Boise at the conference, health and wellness, spirituality, remember we met, and we're going to say, that's right. And we held on to our rope, and we both made it to where we needed to be. And I just love those analogies that we're able to look at from a different point of view. And that's very, very refreshing when we look at commonalities in which we all share. But the cultural identity one is the huge one for us. So as I start, raising up my small family, I have a 5-year-old daughter now, and she's usually here with me, right beside me. She's a dancer, she's a singer, she's a drummer, she's a performer. And the things that she likes to share is her 3 favorite words. And every time we give her the mic, because her name is Kaimas Nimlatis, Camas Lily. She was born in the spring years. That's when the camas lily starts to pop up, one of our traditional foods. But she always likes to remind people, and this is what I love about her. She always likes to remind people, and she says, I love you. She has this really innocent, sweet little spirit in her that's very authentic, and she wants every single person to know that can hear her, that you are loved. And that is so true. Every single one of us, again, have a purpose. There is a destiny that has been written out for our lives. And I love that we're able to look at each other and say, I love you. You've been forgiven. One of the things that I really loved about being able to find my destiny was being able to share it with people that I was really close to and people that I was a part of my family. So sharing what I believed in as far as cultural identity, land reclamation, which means that identifying our traditional homelands, which we have great connections to, because when the reservation systems were put in place, it cut off the natives into being kind of cattled into one area and allowed for settlers to be able to be on the non-reservation areas. So our 19 million acres of original homeland was condensed down into 250,000 acres. So that's over a 90% loss of land. So for us, we couldn't go down to what we called Ma'itspa, which is the stinky place, or what is also known as Yellowstone National Park. That is one of our traditional homelands for gathering, for hunting buffalo, for making sure that we had our village sites set up at all times. There's so many different legends and stories that our people are tied to, even a lot from the people from down this way, the Shoshone and the Bannock people. And then what it is that we're doing is we're making sure that we're not only identifying our traditional uses of land, but we're also making sure that we have a big initiative for land back. Because when we talk about healing and stewardship of the land, we have been able to be the continual healers of this land for over 15,000 years. There was just a recent archaeological find on the Salmon River that dates our people being back here for 15,000 years. And you might think about, I wonder what was happening on this globe then. And that was the era of the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed tiger. That's how long our people have been here. So the more that science and history, technology evolves, the longer and the more often they're looking for Native American indigenous knowledge. But I can guarantee you in another 10 years, that number from 15,000 will probably be pushed back to 20,000. So we say that we've been here since time immemorial, which means we've been here longer than the human memory can even remember. That's the strength that we have as Native people. But not only for Native people, that you guys have an inherent connection to your ancestors as well. So I highly recommend, if you don't know already, to find out where your parents, your mother's parents, their grandparents came from. I mean, I'm talking, I want you to know exactly where they came from, not the general country. I want you to find out exactly where they come from within those communities. And if you can, start researching and maybe even visit those places. And I can guarantee you there's going to be pieces of that spirit that will follow you, because that knowledge is still in you. We just need to try to find an avenue to be able to break that back out. So I highly recommend being able to make those connections, to know who you are, to know exactly where you come from. And I'm talking about the exact locations, because there is this connection again that we have with our soils and our lands, and our waters. My name, Kusnim Kesnuat, one who takes care of water. I mean, that's a very, very big responsibility. And I love that. We all have the same 5 elements to survive as human beings. But not only as human beings, I'm talking about all living organisms. I'm talking about the air, the water, the grass, the animals, the winged relatives, the 4-legged relatives. And those, of course, are our deer, our elk, our buffalo, bison, horses. They're relatives as well, because they're all connected. And we all need the 5 same elements to survive. Does anybody want to call out one of the elements? Air, water, land, light. And we all have a living spirit. Every single one of us is human beings, and everything living around us all has those 5 same things. So we believe that we are no greater or no less than each other or any of the living things around us. Therefore, we have that inherent responsibility to take care of one another in a good way as we move forward. So with that, I will conclude my presentation. But again, Imakas Katsiyayao, a big thank you for allowing me to get up here and share a piece of my heart and my story with you all. And thank you all mostly for the continued love and support. I couldn't do it without you, and I'm very, very happy to be here and to hear from the rest of you today.